breakout room. Got it. Thank you so much. We've got a great group here. We have 19 of us, and we have 3 fabulous speakers. And so I will get going right away. I really appreciate everyone being here. This is the school's breakout room. So if you feel like you're not in the right place, I would not be offended if you leave suddenly. So going, gone. Okay. You're all in the right place. So thanks again. I'm Cynthia again. I'm the Executive Director of the Environmental Defenders. And I'm very proud, and a lot of you may know this already, if you're Defenders members or you live in the community, that the Defenders is the new home and fiscal agent of the McHenry County Schools Environmental Education Program, otherwise known as MCEEP. And we're really fortunate to have MCEEP in the environs of our office. So they are upstairs. We've got our bookstore downstairs, our office, a clearance corner for books, and then MCEEP is upstairs. So we're just so excited to have this connection with our own education pillar of our mission here at McHenry County is education. And of course, MCEEP works in our schools in our county, and they are doing an amazing job. And Gigi is going to let you know all about what they're up to. And they have just been amazing through this pandemic and negotiating and navigating everything they needed to do to still be active with our schools. So we're super proud of Gigi and her environmental educators. So I would like to introduce Gigi now. She was an educator herself for over 3 decades in McHenry County. She worked with 4th through 8th graders in a variety of roles and accompanied her students to the Food Factor, the World Robotics Competition in Mannheim, Germany. Her 2017 students were involved in World Information Transfer's 26th International Conference on Health and Environment. Breathe. Global Partners for Global Solutions. The article on bird strikes was published in the United Nations World Ecology Report. So her students have had a global presence, which is very awesome. And these are probably students who are going to go on to have a big impact on their future, their generation. After retiring in May of 2020, Gigi took on the role of MCEEP director late in the summer. And this was just shortly after the Defenders had voted on to bring MCEEP into our offices and to become home to MCEEP. Delivery models changed from experiential to digital in an effort to keep environmental content available for public, private, parochial, and homeschool groups throughout the county during the pandemic. The amazing environmental educators, otherwise known as EEs, the team fine-tuned virtual presentations, prepared hundreds of lab bags for students, really creative, fun idea. I loved learning about that, and entered classrooms via Zoom or Google Meets through the spring of 2021 for hybridized curriculum. She's very happy to report, especially to the group here, that they're into the classroom 85% of the time. So Gigi is supported by her husband at home and in environmental adventures. She has 2 grown and married children with 1 new grandchild. Congratulations. And her favorite saying is stay in the struggle. And when we email each other, that's what she always leaves off with. And I love that. Struggles can be positive too. So anyway, with that, I will hand it over to Gigi, who I think you can share your screen and take it away, and then we'll continue on with our other 2 speakers.
Okay. Sorry, 1 second. We're trying to get people in. Where do you want me to do this?
Go ahead and just admit those.
Sorry.
And if everyone, while they're doing that, wants to put in their chat, their school affiliation, I see you started doing that, would be just terrific.
Okay. Can you guys hear me? Or am I muted?
No, you're good.
Okay, good. Just so we don't echo back and forth like the Grand Canyon here. Before I start, I'm going to we put together a little slideshow that one of my environmental educators put together for another opportunity that we had, and we added a few things about the curriculum. So I'm going to go to share screen and try to make that all work to tell you a little bit more about MCEEP, who has been in existence for over 34 years. And we have evolved. I saw some of the original people who put together MCEEP in the group of 60 plus that are here. So that's very exciting. And we're glad to be a part of the continuation of the evolution of MCEEP. All right, let me see if I can get to share screen and make this all work. Oh, hello, there you are. So it's showing, okay. We're almost there. Woohoo. Okay, let me see if I can get that to work and we'll get the slideshow. Yay. So I'm not sure how to get rid of the black bar here, but I'm going to move it up out of the way. It says in the end, hang on, I got to move some of these things out. Sorry. Hold on. Can't get my, I'm going to go back out. Let's try that again. I need to move this. There we go. So we talk about from one of our environmental educators who put this together found this, and it is so very true in how we work with children, even from the preschool age up through 8th grade, and even have a high schooler doing some Spanish translation for us, that in the end, we will conserve only what we love only what we understand, and we will only understand what we are taught, which is where we come in as environmental educators. MCEP, who we are. McHenry County Environmental Education Programs, big long word, we like MCEP, it's a little tinier and more easy to digest, have been offering lessons for over 34 years, wherein we inspire awareness to empower action. We feel like if we're facilitating the passion to protect our planet, starting off with the littlest people that can, you know, dig into worms or learn about rocks and recycling, that we can build on that as they go. So this is a overview, I won't go into everything here, that shows what we offer in our curriculum. And it shows it starting in kindergarten, but we have gone into Head Start preschool programs as well as private institutions, where we start with the 4 R's. We don't say 3 because of course we want to add rot at the end, where we explain about composting. We have recycle relays. We try to make it very interactive, informational, you know, packets printed on recycled paper, of course, with color dot to dot. We have a lot of other things, but we also incorporate yoga at the very end, where they start out as a mountain of trash and become, you know, banana peels rotting on the ground. They really like that movement. It's good for them when they've been sitting in front of a screen as much as they have this last year and a half. Most of our schools we found have paper recycling, not always plastic recycling, which is something that we'd like to move towards, as well as styrofoam recycling and others that we've begun discussing here today. But we talk about our good friends, the trees. We try to explain to them all the things that they offer to us, and then how we can help to promote the trees growing in a greater capacity by being able to recycle and understanding how we can use less paper products to begin with. And while digital does help with that, there is also that content that we want students to be able to take home, have something concrete and tangible to remember it and share with their parents. So we do a lot of different things with that as well. We go into composting by 2nd grade, and we've actually sent out these items to schools ahead of time and built compost yards for 2nd grade classrooms. And then when they had movement breaks, they might shake, rattle, and roll their compost jars that we put together, shake it like a Polaroid picture, so that they can see that they can create in a mayonnaise-sized jar a composting earth that is available in about a month. So we teach water cycle next, explaining where all that water comes from, where does it go when we flush, how do we use less of it, how do we protect it. We have groundwater models that we show how pollution filters through, how rainwater filters through, and they come away with a water cycle bracelet so that they have something tangible to take home. 4th grade, sorry, it said powers by the sun. So they're understanding where it's coming from, because they really need to understand where it all begins with the sun. We just take it for granted. We look up there and it's beautiful and it's warming us today, and it's not 8 below 0. And so we really want them to understand how that sun powers everything we do, and how it breaks things down, and how if we don't have it, if we don't protect our planet, how, and we're building up more plastics, how does that sun help us, and how can it, if it only is on the temperature pace that it's on at this point. Watershed, or excuse me, biodiversity. We have some teachers today over at schools in Cary that are teaching biodiversity, and that we are all interconnected. That's a big concept for students, but by 4th and 5th grade, we're finding that they're able to wrap their brains around that for the necessary health of the planet and our own human impacts, and that we all live downstream. So whatever we do is going to follow through and come and get us somewhere down the road. And we talked about how wolves change the river. And let me tell you, even when you're on a Zoom call, like this year, we're in person, but you get a whole group of 25 5th graders howling like wolves at the end. And they think about it the next time they're looking at biodiversity in their books that they're reading and the science that they're doing in their classrooms. So the watershed comes next, which is a wonderful Enviroscape model that we can get about 8 kids around, 8-10 kids around, and talking about where does our water come from, where does it go, but also how is it being polluted by different non-point sources, such as herbicides on lawns, pesticides, farming, industry, so that they can see how when it moves on these models, where it goes to and how it might eventually affect the water that we drink. Again, we all live downstream. Grade 7 is climate disruptions, very pertinent topic right now, as we all know. And grade 8 is green careers, and we've had the good fortune to have Scott Kuykendall come and work with us from the county offices to talk about sustainability, architecture, just different green careers. And we are actually going into a high school class in March, trying to talk to some students there about what could be in their future with green careers. So we do offer extensions, virtual walk videos, or live on a conservation area or nature preserve, story walks. We rock cycle, worms, environmental clubs. We've been at Earth Day events with McHenry County Conservation District, county fair, groundwater festivals, and there's more. It's expanding constantly. Okay, we have a blank page. Whoa, oh, here we go. So this is just some fun things that we do. This was our water cycle, also teaching about the groundwater, these model. That's 2 of our environmental educators there. And there's Recycle, Rita, being held by Pam King, also one of our environmental educators. We were at a Monarch Fest this summer. And this was with 6th graders. Clearly, we're still trying to be elbows apart and seeing how the groundwater model works. Right down on ground level, Hannah is talking about, I believe it's worms at that point, where the kids actually get their hands in it. This is at a little private school where we're studying rocks. And this is part of a relay that they were given, and they had to go put them in the right bins, whether it be trash or just goes to Marengo disposal, or it could be recycled, or you could put it in a compost. This particular Green Club resource guide was put together by Pam King, who put it together for middle and high school environmental focused clubs for it to be student led. These pictures show a bunch of different outside activities that we did, from cleaning up a prairie garden with some students and reseeding them, collecting seeds so they could be given away or sold through the Defenders. We also have 3 gardens at one of the elementary schools in Crystal Lake, and the kids built it with parents and had to weed it and picked the harvest in the fall. So we're trying to get them right in it. And those who contemplate the beauty of the earth find reserves of strength that will endure as long as life lasts. Rachel Carlson. See if will let me move. Oh, might be stuck. There we go. I think we're done with that one. All right. I can't get to my, there we go. Escape button. Yay. All right. So now I'm trying to get back where I can see you. Okay. Sorry. And or new share. Got it. Oops. There we go. Okay. So on that note, we have a lot of things that we're trying to do as we're working into school systems as we're there and they're asking us their environmental clubs, their ecology clubs. Actually, the big question this spring so far has been, how can we learn about composting? And you know, the grand scheme is they would love to have their whole school doing it, but the reality of it is they really need to understand how it works. So we're trying to get these small clubs to get together to use recycled tubs that we have, talking to them about the contents, maybe making their interest and their passion going forward in little tiny steps. For instance, we talked about make it smaller Monday. So trying to get that mindset in children's thought process in the morning as they're packing their lunch. Can we make the plastics, styrofoams, packaging smaller that we put into our bag lunch that day? Eventually, would love to have that be a part of the thought process for the school districts as they're planning what they buy and how they put it on the plate and so on, and then how do they collect that any waste we have afterwards. We talked about, you know, if you use alliteration and it sticks in a kid's brain, like take it home Tuesday or we cycle on Wednesday, little things that we can get into the kids' brain so that it's not just a once a year, we're going to do a waste audit and collect and compare from the month before, but that it's something that we build on. And maybe Mondays are for first grade and they're the only ones composting. So we really are looking at outreach from schools who have said to us, we want to do something. We want to do something little tangible, something that the kids can see, they can do and be a part of, because they really do want to help. They understand the blue recycle bins in their schools, and that's how they automatically will go and put their papers in there. But we've also noticed that some of the teachers say they don't think about it as much anymore because they're so familiar with it. It needs to be zhuzhed up a little bit. So we talked to a school who is in the process of assigning a competition within their grade level, where one class, there's 4 classes in the grade level, are coming up with an idea using recycled cardboard, recycled materials to sleeve over the paper recycling tubs. One had sacrifice your papers and it looked like a giant volcano, and you know, they could toss their papers in there just for something different, and then that would trade out, you know, every week for a while there, and all the contents then being recyclable, just to get the mindset that it becomes part of how they wake up in the morning. What are they going to put in their lunch that they could reduce the amount of plastics, what could be composted, that they're recycling what they can at home and what they're recycling what they can at school. And also, rotting isn't something we've always taught about with the 3 R's, usually that 3 arrows, but we're really trying to push that as we start with them in kindergarten, and it comes back every year and it spirals on that. And we're trying to help them to understand there is something you can do. The tiniest thing, it can be something you can do as a student. That said, we are involved with groups with the Defenders, clearly this one, through the city of Woodstock, public arts of all things, but they're looking at some options to work with us, with the county as well. So if you're interested in talking to us and learning more about it, I put my my email addresses on the slides there, and it's pretty simple. It's just mcseepdirector@gmail.com, and that gives us an opportunity to talk with you via email, because we're all over the county. And this year it's kind of nice because we're in person and we're bringing our things to the classrooms and working with the children. But we do still work in Zoom and Google Meets, depending on the situation and the mitigating factors. District to district are a little different. So we are available, and we'd love to talk to you about your different interests. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gigi, very much. And I will be happy now to introduce our next 2 speakers. They are both with 7 Generations Ahead, and the Defenders is super excited to be partnering with them. 7 Generations Ahead SGA is working in McHenry County as connected with the Defenders to promote and advocate for zero waste lunch programs. And so we look forward to continuing that relationship, and I congratulate them on the receipt of yet another grant to work there and by way of that, the Defenders also is part of that grant. So we're really excited to continue working with our schools one at a time. And maybe after a while, when there's an excellent set of examples, it will really catch on, and we'll have some true zero waste in our cafeterias. So Gary Cuneen is the executive director of 7 Generations Ahead. It's a nonprofit organization serving the Chicago metro area, Illinois, and the Midwest since 2001. Through its mission to promote ecologically sustainable and healthy communities. During the past 19 years, Gary has designed, implemented, and managed SGA programs, directed sustainability planning and implementation initiatives, and has catalyzed the creation of statewide and regional networks, including, and I'm sure some of you have heard of these, the Illinois Food Scrap Coalition, Illinois Farm to School Network, the Fox Valley Sustainability Network, and the Will County Regional Sustainability Network. Gary is the co-founder of Greentown, the Future of Community, a conference that has been produced 22 times in 4 Midwest states, which targets leaders from the Chicago area and Midwest to learn about leading edge sustainable city initiatives and best practices. Gary directs Planet Green, a sustainability plan, implementation, and report initiative in Oak Park, Illinois, and River Forest, Illinois, and founded SGA's It's Our Future program, designed to equip youth to advocate for climate crisis solutions and their futures. So we're going to hear from Gary now, and then I will introduce his colleague Susan after his talk. Thank you, Gary. Great to see you.
Great to see you too, Cynthia. And we're really also very excited to be partnering with Defenders on the Full Circle grant. And I think it's, if I'm not mistaken, our 3rd year of formal partnership. Yep. So that's wonderful. And you all are doing great work. And it was wonderful to hear McSee present this morning as well. You all are so much older than us as an organization. We're only in our 21st year, and you guys have a long-term track record, both of your organizations. So I very much appreciate that. I'm just going to set the table. Susan's going to take the bulk of the presentation, but I did want to let people know a little bit about some of the things that we've done and how that sort of plays into our Zero Waste Schools work now. Back in 2004, we were engaged with schools by starting a farm to school program in Illinois that really educates children about healthy eating and local sustainable foods, and then works on the procurement end, gardens, etc. In 2007, we started to, after attending BioCycle conferences, started to really get into the zero waste arena. We organized our own zero waste events. In 2008, we started our Zero Waste Schools program in Holmes Elementary School in Oak Park, and then it spread to literally to all the schools in the district. Later in 2012, and Susan's going to talk a lot about the Zero Waste Schools process that we've been doing for these years. As we moved on, after a Greentown conference, we convened a bunch of solid waste agencies to create the Illinois Food Scrap Coalition, which is really working on a statewide level policy, best practices, implementation, trying to get composting into institutions. So I know some of you are probably familiar with that work. And then the Fresh Taste Initiative invited us to collaborate on the development of the Wasted Food Action Alliance, which Jen Nelson now from our staff is facilitating. So we're deeply embedded and committed to our work in zero waste. Really excited right now to be working with Chicago Public Schools on sort of the next iteration of our Zero Waste Schools work there to hopefully scale that program up across the district. We're also working on a CPS Go Solar initiative. So those of you that are working in schools who are interested in solar, we sort of have a process that we work through. And again, Cynthia, we're just excited to be working with Defenders. And with that, I'll pitch it back to you, and you can introduce our Zero Waste Schools program manager, Susan Casey.
Thanks so much, Gary. Appreciate it. And hi, Susan. So good to see you
Hello.
too. It's funny how of course, being in person would be so incredibly exciting, but it's still so good to see people. I feel like we're kind of getting used to this, but it's nice to see movement and real faces. So yes, Susan is Zero Waste Schools Program Manager at 7 Generations Ahead. And she works with school staff and students to shift operations and minds towards generating zero waste through source reduction, recycling, composting, and food recovery. She co-authored the Food Waste Reduction Toolkit for Illinois schools, and in collaboration with other members of the Wasted Food Action Alliance. Prior to SGA, Susan was a middle school science teacher in Chicago Public Schools and has led several school-based sustainability initiatives. Susan enjoys spending time in our region's many forest preserves and natural areas and has quite a few favorites here in McHenry County. And Susan, with that, I will hand it over to you, but I will also invite you to go hiking with me at one of the conservation district sites.
That would be awesome. I've been to quite a few and go back to the same ones, but I'd love to always find some more. So thank you, Cynthia. And thank you so much to you and your whole team for bringing this together. It can be really powerful to be together like this, even if we're virtual. So yeah, Gary introduced us, our organization, but yeah, we've had the Zero Waste Schools program since 2008. Here are some of the other programs that he mentioned. But specifically with the Zero Waste Schools program, we work with school staff and students, and it's shifting operations and minds. So it's through technical assistance and through education towards generating zero waste with a focus on source reduction or prevention, recycling, composting, and food recovery. And as Gary mentioned, we've been working with the Defenders for 3 years now, and we are in the process. I see Carrie Gassman's in the room today, and we are working with one school so far in McHenry County for a Zero Waste Schools program, and that's Prairie Grove. So helping them with their launch for a Zero Waste Schools program. Basically, we help lunchrooms that look like this become zero waste lunchrooms that look like this. And we do this by, these are the ways that everybody can get to zero waste. And it's using this waste hierarchy where you've got the 3 R's of reduce, reuse, recycle, and compost. But it's with that focus, it's organized so that the most desirable, the most effective way to get to zero is at the top with reducing. Don't make materials that you don't need in the first place. Those that you do, you reuse, and what you can't reuse, they're designed to be recycled or composted. And this is how we're gonna get there. And this is what this is the approach we use in schools as well. So just want to start with this snapshot of lunch at a middle school with about 980 students. What we found with the waste audit there is that 75% of all the cafeteria waste that day was food. Now the darker green was the compostable food scraps, and this school does have commercial composting, but all of those pink areas there, that's totally uneaten food. And that image on the right shows all the totally untouched food at a school with just under 1,000 students. So it's pretty appalling. And this is one area where we're trying to work on a lot. So I'm going to talk a lot about food waste, plastic waste, and then kind of go through the process that we use to help schools. So some of the factors that contribute to food waste, the seated lunchtime is not long enough. Even if students have 20 minutes of that official lunch period, by the time they get through the food line, it's often much less than that. There's also the reimbursable meal requirements for the National Lunch Program. Oftentimes the food, like in this picture, is heavily packaged. Whole fruits like whole oranges can take longer to eat, and portions can be too large for younger students especially. And the problem with food waste, I know Julie has already talked quite a bit about these issues this morning, but over 7 billion school meals are served each year in the US, and much of this food is feeding landfills instead of nourishing students. This is while 1 in 6 children is food insecure. and wasting food, waste the water, the energy used in the farming, all that effort in processing, transporting, and preparing the food. Wasting food waste money and labor along the entire supply chain. And the methane created when food decomposes in a landfill contributes to climate change. And ReFed has said that uneaten food in K through 12 schools shows how much that contributes to greenhouse gases. So 7 generations ahead, we collaborated with the Wasted Food Action Alliance, partners in that group, to create this resource, the Food Waste Reduction Toolkit for Illinois Schools. It provides strategies that are quick and easy, as well as some that are more multi-step, longer initiatives. And it also includes case studies that highlights some inspirational efforts across schools, in schools across Illinois. And you can access this for free download from our website or from the Wasted Food Action Alliance website. And these are the following sections in the toolkit, and they're pretty much aligned with the way the EPA's food recovery hierarchy is organized, with prevention or source reduction at the top. So there's a section on measuring food waste. So that's where you'll find guides on waste audits and what to do with that data that you get from a waste audit. There's a section on preventing food waste, food recovery, and redistribution, otherwise known as share tables, composting food scraps, education and engagement, and communicating and celebrating success. So I'm just going to talk about 3 of those sections. Preventing food waste, you'll find information on scheduling, how longer seated time can impact how much food waste there is. Things like scheduling recess before lunchtime has been shown to give students, get them more focused on eating. Ideas for enhancing the cafeteria experience, sourcing from school gardens and local farms as a way to encourage the consumption of healthy food. There are things you could do with menu planning and food prep, like student taste tests, or providing fewer menu options. And then serving methods and equipment, like the offer versus serve, or things like bulk milk dispensers. And then food recovery and redistribution of return food. This is what can be done about that uneaten food that could be given or used in another way. So we're not talking about sandwiches that students can touch, but items that could be shared with other students or with outside agencies. And so this is primarily through share tables, which are encouraged by the USDA. They're encouraged by the Illinois State Board of Ed, but they're basically where students can place school food items, so no foods from home, but school food items that are unopened, factory sealed items, or whole fruit with a peel, the things they did not eat. And then these items can be made available to other students during or after the meal service. Now, during COVID, maybe this part is suspended where we're sharing during the meal service, but there are options still for like a one-way share table where those items could go back into the kitchen for future reimbursable meals. They could be used for school backpack programs, or maybe snacks that the social worker could provide to students, or they could be donated to a food pantry. Now, given the time that we have right now, I'm not going to go into that any further, but the resources, you can find lots of resources about shared tables in that food waste reduction toolkit. But also, throughout Illinois, we've got a patchwork of local health departments. And so it's really important to check with your local health department to find out what your local regulations are around this. Not all the same things can be shared, or, it's something you definitely that the schools need to check with their local health department on. And then composting is another option for schools. So glad to hear from Gigi how much interest there is in composting. Schools generally have 2 options, on-site composting, which is like backyard composting, and that's the picture at the top of one school's compost bin. And just like at home, when you have a backyard bin, that's only fruit and vegetable scraps. mixed with yard trimmings. And it's a really great learning activity for students. It does take some staff time or volunteer time to make sure that the food scraps, the fruit and vegetable scraps that are collected, say in a lunchroom or from snack, get out to the compost bin every day, do the turning, but there's really so much opportunity for learning how to do this and for students to then take that home and, maybe start a backyard bin at their own home. The other option for schools is commercial composting where it's available, and it's becoming increasingly available thanks to the work of groups like the Illinois Food Scrap Coalition. But it's really kind of different in that it's all food scraps. So it's meat and dairy, and in some cases, food soiled paper. And so you're really able to divert much more materials with commercial composting. And the other key difference is that instead of that composting happening on site, those materials are hauled off site to a commercial facility for composting there. So significant diversion, relatively easy to manage, say relative to on-site composting. Okay, now I'm going to switch to plastics. So Jamie was sharing a lot of information about plastics. I kind of want to just start with this general slide here. About half of all plastics produced are used just a single time, and that is by design. And the US generates the most plastic waste of any country in the world at 42 million metric tons per year. When we look at plastic use in school lunches, here's what we see on the left. There's just one of the many bins in this school lunchroom overflowing with styrofoam trays. And also we see plastic recyclable bottles. The picture on the right is a waste audit. So this school even has commercial composting, the school on the right. And once we take out all the food scraps and all the recyclable plastic, this is still what's left. So it's still a really important issue. Even schools that do the composting and the recycling, we still really need to deal with these single-use, non-recyclable plastics. And we can see like this one pile down here, lots of materials are coming from the school meal. And plastics, the issues, they never decompose. They just get smaller, become smaller and smaller bits. Microplastics are found in very remote places around the globe. They're found in wildlife, they're found in our food, and they're found in us. And 99% of all plastics are made from fossil fuels. So plastic contributes to greenhouse gas emissions at every stage of its life cycle. So this really is a climate change issue as well. One really wonderful way to educate students as well as adults and community leaders about the issue of microplastics is Cafeteria Culture's film, Microplastic Madness. We were, Cynthia and Scott Kuykendall from McHenry County, we joined up for hosting a screening last year. And I know a number of McHenry County schools were able to join that. But you can host a screening. You could host it at the community level. You could host it for a classroom, just for your school. Very inspirational film. I cannot recommend it enough. You see all these amazing activities that the students do to learn about plastics, collect data about it, but then they take action on it and they are changing laws. They are changing what's happening in their schools and in their districts. So it's very powerful. To go along with it, Cafeteria Culture has created a Microplastic Madness toolkit. They are continually adding new resources to it. And one of them is the desktop lunch survey. They're also promoting that schools do a plastic-free lunch day. And I know that's something that Cynthia and the Environmental Defenders is really interested in seeing happen across McHenry County. So check out those great resources. And when it comes to reducing plastic or really any waste, procurement choices really matter. They impact waste levels, but they also impact health. What you see here, so the worst really for both waste and health are the polystyrene trays. Those have been found to leach into foods. So they also, not only create a whole lot of waste, but they have impacts as health impacts as well. A better choice for waste is to go with compostable foodware, but as you had heard earlier, sometimes still not all facilities are accepting those. So that's something to look into, but it's still a better option. And you want to look for the PFAS-free products, PFAS being polyfluoroalkyl substances. And the way to look for more information is that link down at the bottom. The Center for Environmental Health has recently come out with a very helpful guide that looks at the health and environmental impacts associated with various single-use and reusable foodware items. But really the best way to go is with the reusable trays, reusable utensils, reusable cups. So the reusable foodware, it is going to reduce waste and is generally going to be better for health. There's some of this discussion in the larger session about compostable foodware. You want to look for products that are BPI certified. Another certification out there is CMA or Compost Manufacturers Alliance. So check with those. But even if these products are certified, you want to check with your hauler to see if they will accept those. So, you don't just want to get that going before you start. And so even the liner bags there, that's that green bag in the bottom photo, those are compostable. And they're generally, pretty important to have if you're going to be doing commercial composting. Now I'm going to get to a little more on how 7 generations ahead, how our zero waste program works. We are generally focused on the lunchroom just because that's where so much waste is generated. And so here's what a typical lunchroom sorting station will look like. The share table, again, is an option. You want to check with the local health department before implementing one of those. But this is otherwise a full station that includes commercial composting and something like the compostable trays. So you'd have a place to empty liquids, a bin for your recycling, a bin for the landfill trash, a bin for the compostable food scraps and food soiled paper, and then a place to stack compostable trays, which can then go into the compost at the end of lunch. We find stacking trays, if you've got single-use trays, whether they're compostable or styrofoam, just stacking them will greatly reduce the volume of the materials, and then it will help you lessen your need for higher hauling capacity. If you don't have commercial composting in your area, again, maybe on-site composting, and so the signage might look a little different. The bin would maybe be smaller for collecting fruit and vegetable scraps. Or if you're not starting there, we encourage schools to start wherever they can. So if you're going to just start with recycling, say the milk cartons, maybe you'd have just bin liquids recycling in landfill to begin with, and then a tray for stacking carts. So we're encouraging schools to start where they are and take those next steps. This is generally our steps for helping schools go to zero waste, and that's building a zero waste team. It's really important to have key people, the food service staff, the facilities staff, administration, teachers, and interested parents together to plan these strategies from the get-go. It can be helpful if you're not sure how much commercial composting service would you need? What are we talking about? How much food do you have available for a share table? That's really helpful then to do a baseline waste audit. Keeping in mind that, with the ways that menus vary day to day, it might be helpful to do it over a couple days to see what you're dealing with. And then get together and plan your waste reduction strategies. So think about where you can reduce waste through prevention by procurement decisions, and some of those other ways to prevent waste that I mentioned earlier, the food recovery, the share tables. And then is composting an option for you? Recycling. And then it's coordinating those operational changes for hauling. The image there in the middle shows dumpsters that you might use. Other schools might use toters for the commercial compost hauling. It's figuring out what sorting stations you'll need and where they'll go. And then cannot underemphasize the need for education. We feel it's really important to educate not only how to do the sorting and to manage these things, but why. That's, you know, part of our education, we teach students and staff what happens to each of these material streams. So they know that when they put the apple core in this bin versus this bin, why that makes such a difference. And, you know, connect it to the bigger issues of climate change and plastic waste. We feel it's really important for everybody to understand both how and why, to encourage them to participate, and also to bring these lessons home. And then it's implementing the strategies. For us, when we work with a school and it involves a new sorting routine, which it usually does, you know, there's the big launch day where that new sorting routine starts in the lunchroom. And, you know, things might take a little longer sorting everything to begin with, but students learn it and they get it over time. It can be helpful to do a post-launch waste audit so you can show your impact. So you can see how much you're diverting for composting or recycling, et cetera. And then a really key thing is to keep an eye on hauling. You might be adding dumpsters like this or toters for composting, but are you able to then reduce your trash service? You know, usually yes, and usually that'll save money and it will offset the cost of the added organics hauling. So you definitely want your facilities folks to look for those opportunities for right sizing. And then really important is to communicate and celebrate that impact as a school and with your school community. This shows just a snapshot of the waste diversion at one of the Chicago public schools we work with that has just over 1,000 K-5 students. You could see the total weights at the bottom of each of those pie charts. Again, it's menu variation here. So one day it was 667 total pounds, another day 586 total pounds. But you could see the difference. When we started there and we did the baseline waste audit, the only thing being recycled in the cafeteria and the kitchen was cardboard boxes from the kitchen. So only 38 pounds out of that total was recycled. With the program, when composting was added and recycling and liquids were diverted, that went down to 63, just 63 pounds of materials were going to the landfill. And volume wise, on the lunchroom side, they were typically taking out 25 large bags of trash every day. And with the program, that went down to those 2 bags that you see there. And that again is that mainly that plastic stuff that was in that one picture. So the impact, so a lot on waste diversion, but we've also got the impact on the students. So with the 14 schools that are already launched in CPS, that's over 10,000 students that are on a daily basis composting and recycling and learning how to do that. 1 ton of food scraps and trays are composted per day at the 14 schools. That's over 3,000 pounds of materials kept out of landfills, 6,500 milk cartons. And again, these have greenhouse gas impacts. There you see there how much is diverted or avoided per year in terms of greenhouse gases. But again, I really love this quote, and so I'm going to read it. It really gets to the heart of the impact on students. This is a high school student that said, "At my elementary school, we didn't do this. The fact that we're sharing this experience is amazing. We didn't do anything at home before either. No recycling, nothing. You'd be surprised. A lot of kids do care. Once they see the impact, they want to be on the zero waste team." So just want to encourage you that zero waste is a journey and to just get started and keep going. As Cynthia and Gary mentioned, we have the ability to work with McHenry County Schools. So reach out to us if you're a school that would like to consider a Zero Waste Schools program. And there's our website. A lot of resources are there, but I'll also be sharing some with the defenders if they're going to be sharing some afterwards. So thank you so much. I will stop sharing my screen.
Susan, thank you. It's so wonderfully covered and so organized. And if the process of getting this going in our schools is as organized as your talk, I think we can do this. You make it seem very possible. And of course it is, because you've already done it in Chicago Public Schools and a little bit in McHenry County. So before we open it up for some questions and discussion about what our schools are doing and the representatives here who could share that, would you talk a little bit about what we've been doing here in McHenry County? I know our programs were affected by the pandemic, but can you just kind of update the folks here on the schools we've worked with and what we've been achieving as much as we could achieve?
So Cynthia, is that question for Gigi or me?
For you, about about the zero waste school, the toolkit. Yeah, just kind of update.
Yeah, no, absolutely for sure. The pandemic has not only impacted schools, but then also the work that we can do in schools. And it's interesting what we're finding is that it's impacting schools in different ways. Every school has different space constraints, staffing constraints. And so, it's some schools where they've had this program for years, they've been able to relaunch without too much interruption when students went back. But at others, they're still not relaunched because of where the students are eating and the challenges around that. And I know Prairie Grove, we've been working, it's been a process. And I know, Carrie, can you give an update? I know you were like on the verge of restarting, or not restarting, but start launching the program.
So I am actually, are you working with them at the high school?
At Prairie Grove, you're at Prairie Grove? I was looking at the chat.
Yeah, so you have been in communication. I didn't know that they were working with you actually, because I work as a supervisor and was hired since they have so many kids now eating in the classrooms. And I can see that it's much more food waste now. Previously, when all the kids were in the lunchrooms, they could have a choice of which vegetable they wanted, and they went with their tray. Well, now they are just given their one, here's your hot lunch option, so, and they get it in a plastic bag that half of them carry to their classroom. So they're trying really hard. Prairie Grove it's preschool through 8th grade. It's a consolidated, and then the high school is separate. So I think it's currently they try to do lunch just on the junior high side, but they want it to be student led with the student council. So they really haven't no educational materials have gone out. So I'm so excited to hear that they've been working with you, Susan, because there's this big gap of, we didn't do the waste audit. I think it's so essential for them to have that, to see the mountain of food and that visual where you go, oh my goodness, we do have to do something about this. We totally blew over that opportunity. And I think that's a really important one. The second is we didn't have any education on it. So try and get an 8th grade boy to say, well, anyone to say, why is it important to take the 20 seconds they've been dumping their tray in the waste bin the whole time. So without telling them why it's important to take those 20 seconds, they're just not going to do it. I think where it is powerful is we can get the education in with the younger elementary side. By the time they get to junior high, they're not going to question it because they're at that age where they're just going to do what you show them how to do. So I can see it. I'm like, wow, if we start this now, what a massive impact it will make in these 5 years. But as far as with COVID right now, I'm having administration say, Carrie, thanks for bringing this to our attention. And you're right, we should do something, but we are up to our eyeballs in COVID. I mean, principals are subbing in classrooms right now. The principal brings a change of shoes because she doesn't know if the custodian gets symptoms midday, she might, I mean, other staff is having to fill in all these roles. So I know they're excited and want to, but I mean, there's just so much other things going on right now. We're saying they just don't have the time to commit to it. And I'm kind of proposing, it was great they let me off today to be here. And I think I'm going to propose that we put a pause because everyone is struggling right now with time constraints and more pressing issues. I get food waste is not very high on their priority list, but to maybe do a reset and roll all of it out again with like an Earth Day program or something along those lines. So I'll be really excited to partner and talk with you more, Susan.
Yeah. So exactly. And we've been in touch with the superintendent. So it's like looking for that opportunity to launch. And as you point out, there are constraints that COVID is still putting a stressor on schools. So we are here, we're looking for the opportunities where they are. And at some schools, it is easier with the space constraints. Like if they're eating in the lunchroom, there really is no reason why it couldn't, be started in at least those portions of the building where students are eating where they're eating in the lunchroom. So yeah, there's still opportunities, and we do have the ability to work with more schools this year. So we're looking forward to doing that.
I know with all the 3 different breakout rooms, the effects that the pandemic has had on all of these efforts. A couple of years ago, we were supposed to see the single-use legislation statewide, but of course that was completely pushed back due to COVID. And supporting local restaurants, unfortunately, also meant an uptick in plastic carryouts, that sort of thing. So I think what I'd like to do to get kind of involve everybody real quick is to ask a question, and you can do like a thumbs up on currently what kind of lunch trays do you use in your school's cafeteria. So if you're using a reusable lunch tray, something that can be washed, can I get thumbs up on anyone here who is using reusable lunch trays? Okay. And then what about styrofoam, polystyrene lunch trays? Do the schools use that? Okay, that's good because I don't see any thumbs, which is good. Paper, pre-pandemic we used reusable paper trays. Okay, does anybody want to jump in and just talk about their tray experience? I think it would be interesting to learn more from you about your tray experience.
And we laughed and laughed.
And they laughed.
I'm in Johnsburg, and I have 3 cafeterias that use we have a dish machine. I have one school that for 22 years, we've had no dish machine. So we've always used disposables. The good thing is this year we cannot get styrofoam. So I had to go to the paper cardboard, but now I can't get those. We even reached out to a manufacturer in Texas, and we were able to hoard 60 cases, and I'm down to my last few cases. I don't know what I'm going to feed these kids on.
Hey, yeah, Anna, that's a great point. Richard at Huntley School District, we, for our elementaries, 5 schools, we use reusable trays, which work out well. But now the problem with COVID is that we have so many kids still eating in classrooms due to spacing and things like that. So it makes me have to use a polystyrofoam container to deliver those to the classrooms.
Right.
Or I'm using multiple bags and other plastic containers inside the bags. So that's really, we have a good program, but due to COVID, we were stuck with having to accept even a worse program for a temporary. So we can't wait to get back to just trays. And then we'd like to work on the maybe the reusable fork type things and things. And then I'd be really interested if anyone is doing the bulk milk. I'd be really interested in hearing about something about that.
See, and our problem is we have kids eating in the dining room, in hallways, in pods, just to keep that social distancing. And I mean, they're taking their trays and they're spilling stuff. And So I like the idea of the bulk milk, but I don't know how that's going to happen. And God forbid we give them real silverware.
I can jump in.
That's-
So we hosted a webinar within the last year focused on the switching, transitioning to reusables. And I'm going to find it and I'll put the link in there. It got recorded, but we had the food service director from Austin, Texas, share their shift to reusables, and Minneapolis has done a lot around shifting to reusables. So especially, I'm really encouraged to hear that many of you do have dishwashers. One idea that came up with that for that one school that does not, I don't know if transporting dirty dishes to the more one that has a central kitchen, that's one solution that was used at that I know came out of that webinar, but I'll look for that and I'll put that in the chat.
I would love to do that. Unfortunately, the way the kitchen is set up, we had a referendum and I thought, God, let's get a dishwasher. But then it's in a cafegimatorium. So there's no window to return the trays. I would have to shift a lot of equipment around. I mean, it would just be a major ordeal. How we let this happen without a dishwasher, I just don't know, but it's disgusting.
I'm at Crystal Lake 47 and I have 7,000 students that I'm feeding pre-K through 8th at 12 different buildings.
Mhm.
Pre-pandemic, we were reusable pretty much across, the district with the trays as well as the baskets type things for that. So we're using far less than what we are now due to staffing, as well as trying to get the kids in and out to the various areas. We do a lot of brown paper bags. Well, technically probably white, depending upon what stock is there. For that, I know that I have parents that complain because their kids are getting a sack lunch, but they don't realize that because of our staffing, a lot of bags are pre-packaged with like all the items. And then their sandwich, say the hot sandwich goes in at the end, that's what they chose. Luckily, one of the most popular things are what we call fun on the run, which can be completely bagged because it's like yogurt, cheese, and so forth. I do know in the presentation you mentioned with the share tables about the reusing of some of those things. Good luck at getting that past a federal auditor for the lunch program, because that is double dipping. It's a great idea to be able to share that, but you have to make sure that if it's shared, it's going out to your students versus not coming back into your kitchen, because once it leaves that kitchen, it should not come back. Because I had a nice custodian that thought about that one year, but yet it was also audit time and we got dinged on it. The other thing is that there is new legislation that within our wellness policies, we have to start putting things on there for like food sharing plans. With say like not-for-profits, like PADS is one of them that actually reached out to me. Unfortunately, we're not really currently in a situation to be able to get things moved to them in a proper way of doing that. So that's sort of like how we are here in 47. I also do have a food vendor. So as we go into say potentially like our next bid, I will be honest and say that I've rolled it as long as I can, because food pricing, at least I know my known in my food costs that I'm going to have versus all the new high pricing that's out there for everyone. That these are some of the things that we can actually put in to part of that bid, as maybe asking them that if we're in this situation, we want it to be more compostable versus like say the styrofoam. But again, I feel the pain of everybody here in schools of trying to minimally at least getting the kids fed however we need to do it.
And that's important too, like you said, staffing issues. I mean, I had half my staff out, and if I had one more person out, I had to pick which kitchen do I close. So I hate all the plastic, but it is what it is.
I know one of the obstacles, of course, is always price. I mean, a lot of industries or, establishments, including our restaurants, and they might be talking about this right now, is the cost of compostable or the cost of reusing. So Susan, I think you maybe can touch on what schools do, connecting with others, other schools, so that there's a consortium bid so that the price comes down for schools, and how we can, Defenders and SGA can help connect schools to place those orders for compostables.
Sure. I'm going to mention an example there, but first I just wanted to point out, I put in the chat the USDA guidance that is in that's available at this website, where it does say that it is allowable for items that are like the surplus of a share table, that they could be used back, taken back by the kitchen and used in a future reimbursable meal.
Thank you for that. I wish their auditors would follow the same standards then.
Yeah, I think it's an education too it's not, the idea of share tables is not really out there that widely yet. And especially with the local health departments, their awareness about them, I think, is growing, but it's not all there. So I just want to point out too that the Illinois State Board of Education, they have an administrative handbook that they update every year. And if you go to section J8 of that handbook, you will see pretty much identical language that is in this USDA memo. So ISB has adopted it as well. And I'll have to say though that both of ISB and USDA language, it encourages their use. It kind of spells out what options you have available for using that share table surplus, but it doesn't provide standard operating procedures, which can be so important for giving schools the confidence on how to manage these items. And so that's recognized. There is a group out of the Illinois Extension, actually a professor there leading the work, Melissa Flew Prescott. She is working with Extension on creating a template of standard operating procedures around share tables so that schools will have the confidence to do that. Is that Carrie, go ahead.
Oh,
Thanks.
and then
I
can we
know
go
you-
back to that question?
Oh, sure, sorry,
Yeah.
Cynthia.
Did you want me to pause?
Oh, no, go ahead. Susan will come back around to my question. Go ahead, Carrie.
Oh, great, thank you. So I know you had mentioned even in your slide is make sure that it's like we encourage, like you said, the ISB is saying, we encourage share tables. We want you to do this. People are worried you're going to get dinged, but they actually can't do that with your auditors. And you can take it back into your kitchen one time if it's sanitized in between uses, like stop throwing this food in the garbage. But yet you also say, but check with your local municipality, make sure that you're not, their rules might be stricter than ours, so check with them. I have not been able to have any progress in once I've reached out to them saying, this is what I'm seeing. I'm seeing that we can reserve it. I can do a share program. We can either bring it to a food pantry or feed it to farm animals. But I need your confirmation that I'm not missing anything. I think that's what the school's needing as well.
Yeah.
How help? I mean, is this a problem everywhere or is it just for me?
You know what, I feel like I need help with that too, in understanding what are the most effective things. And, and this is what I'm learning as I go along with this. And I'm relying a lot on Melissa Prescott, like I mentioned, to help figure this out and see how things are around the state. But so the food safety side is kind of a different side of it where the local health department comes in. I just wanted to mention how the USDA though, they're what they're saying when it comes to that, more of that financial part that of putting it back into a reimbursable meal. But I do want to get back to Cynthia's question about schools working together to, I think the nature of your question was like bulk purchasing. And one really big example of that I'm aware of is for the largest school districts across the country are part of the Urban School Food Alliance. And so this is Chicago, New York, Miami, LA, and quite a few others by now. And they, I think, do this in many ways. And one of those is the compostable tray that they've gotten through their buying power together. They've gotten a tray of those compostable trays to be much less expensive than they were before then for those districts. So, I know your districts, your school districts, many of them in McHenry County might just be a single school. So there isn't, going with the Urban School Food Alliance, it's a bigger group, but my understanding is that you could also have buying power amongst yourselves. But I won't speak too much on that because I'm not, I don't know that side of things quite as well, but this is something that I've heard is possible.
That may be something that when we talk about our goals that we might as a group want to work toward, maybe that would be one of them to learn more about how that might be possible. Any other schools want to contribute their experience, what's happening? I know it's so hard because of the pandemic. You can talk pre-pandemic or post what you're hopeful for, but anything else that you'd want to share experience if you are recycling in your cafeterias or were, again, pre-pandemic. Would love to hear more about your own experiences here.
Sarah, did you have your hand up?
So if you do, go ahead and just go unmute and look forward to hearing about anything that else you'd like to share about what your cafeteria practices are. And we can also talk about composting as well at this point. So we're talking about two different things, which is this waste reduction action team is all about, and that's reducing the use of single-use plastics and the reduction of food waste. So is anybody composting food waste at their schools currently?
I wanted to a couple years ago, but I had a lot of pushback from the teachers that they wouldn't, that who was going to come in during the summertime to do this.
Oh,
So-
like for composting that would be on site.
Right, for like a school garden
So
or
maybe,
something
yes.
like that.
Right, which would be the best scenario, I think. But of course, as you may have heard earlier, we have Midwest Organics in our midst. And so that could be a partner for pickup of compost, just as an idea. Because again, what Susan said, step by step, not to try to take everything at once, but we all know when we do a little bit, how much that helps and gets us step by step going to where we want to go. Susan, go ahead. Oh, you're on mute. Don't you love that? We've all done it.
Thank you. So for composting in summer, Anna, are you, is it for on-site composting or commercial composting? What is it that you'd like to do?
Ultimately, we'd like to get school gardens and composting, and it was a pipe dream a couple years ago. One of my schools does have a school garden. They erected a beautiful greenhouse and it's sitting unused right now because it's a great idea in the beginning, but then it kind of peters out as the kids graduate or teachers move on. Then it becomes more of an albatross around the next person's neck. And then the janitors were so short-staffed that I don't know how to get the buy-in from them to sort and separate. Yes, the kids can do it, but it's increasing the workload on them.
Well, one thing with the compost bin, if you have a compost bin on site, that, if parents graduate out of the school or if there are staffing transitions and you aren't using it for a short amount of time, it's not gonna, it's okay, it'll sit there. It's not like it'll smell or something because that food will be decomposed by that time. So, then if the next group comes along and they want to get it going again, that really shouldn't be a problem. The bin might need a little repair, something like that, but it's not so much of an issue during the summer because you're not adding new stuff to it. And then for commercial composting, that is something that you could have discontinued, temporarily suspended during the summer when there's no food being generated. Or like a lot of times in Chicago, they might have students in the building in the summer, different students that are there than the rest of the year. So those students haven't been taught how to do it. So we recommend don't do the sorting station unless, this is the regular group of students that you're used to dealing with.
Doug, go ahead and unmute.
Yes, I just wanted to say that we have had a very successful garden program going on, sponsored by the Scouts in the back of one of our K2 buildings. I don't think they're using kitchen or food waste, but they've been promoting yard waste from around the community to come over there. And it's been very successful. It's been a very, very nice garden that's really doing very well. Unfortunately, our sponsor for the whole program has left the state, so it's starting to slow down, but I do recognize that you need a good person behind it to keep it successful. But I've often been interested about the composting component, and I just think that one of my concerns has always been that we have so much wildlife in our area that we've had complaints and scares on the playgrounds of the attraction to that being on the property. So I want to be very careful about how to do that. And if there's any little templates for how to build a composting station or something, we could probably consider maybe even our high school program to actually build them, and we could put them out on the properties in our school district. If you guys have any models for something like that to share, that'd be great.
Gigi, did you want to jump in?
I was just going to say that one of the things that I talked about with the elementary buildings and the middle schools that we're very interested in is that you have to start at that education stage and teaching them, even if it's in the, a Miracle Whip jar, for lack of a better size, just for them to see it, how it works. One of the ones that we're looking at one of the schools is with an ecology club, but we're literally building it in totes that are like the 24 by 18. They're recycled. A couple of them don't have lids anymore, which is great because they nest inside the other one. So they have an opportunity for it to drain below, just to teach a group of students how it could look in a classroom, not necessarily outside first, because it can be aerated enough with what they would bring in, just that small group. Because kids will want to do this so much once they get into this, and then a teacher's all excited, and then we got to, like you said, we have to get custodians, buildings and grounds. If you're going to take it outside, who maintains it, who picks it up, how are you going to use it for a garden? So if we can back up just to that little tiny step to say, what is composting? How do we do it at this little small scale? Could we do it just on Tuesdays with second grade? And we'll just see what we can get to, because sometimes if we make it so big, it's so big that we can't get started. And if we start with one classroom, one teacher who's willing to shake it like a Polaroid picture, every day, or kids doing that, it's a place to start. They understand it doesn't smell, that if they're doing it right, if it does smell, what do we problem solve to fix it, which is another part of the scientific method. So, there is that whole plan, like Susan was saying, and all the people that have to be involved when you're going to have a tumbler that goes outside. And you're right, if you get the $400 tumbler that can sit out there and the kids can push it over. We were at a school with pre-K, 2-year-olds to 6-year-olds, and they had the one that looks like a giant pill that just kind of spins, and it was somebody's job, to go out there and just knock it over twice a day. Those are great. Was a small school, probably not more than 200 children. So you have to decide, do you want to teach them what it's all about first, then get into the grade level, then get into 2 grade levels, the bigger school waste audit. I think that they really are going to get into that more as restrictions, mitigations loosen up with COVID. We know how overwhelmed teachers are, truly. So when we come into classrooms and we're teaching, we bring everything with to help them learn, including my coffee grounds and eggshells and whatever else that we can bring with. And then those kids take ownership in building them. And that's even deeper into their spirit to continue this on and share it with other kids.
Thank you, Gigi. Carrie asked about doing an on-site compost versus commercial composting because the different materials that are accepted. Does anyone have any experience with deciding between those two, or if one's easier or harder for the schools?
I can take that. And I wanted to mention again that food waste reduction toolkit that we have, and I could put that in the link, in the chat. We actually have a chart in there that kind of compares side by side different aspects of both. And it's not that if you have commercial composting available, that would be definitely something to consider, because you're able to divert all of the food scraps, not just the fruit and vegetable, and in some cases, food soiled paper, depending on who's processing it. So the waste diversion potential is just huge. And that's something where you would want to maybe take it on as a whole school. Like Gigi said, if you're doing on-site composting, that's really great, for maybe a grade level project. Maybe the fifth graders are the ones who work with a staff person to take out the fruit and vegetable scraps from lunch. And the learning experience that goes along with it is they're seeing the critters in they're seeing the worms and everything else in the compost pile, decomposing those materials, and they see how it transforms from a recognizable banana peel into soil, and they can smell it and feel it. And so they're just kind of different. They're both forms of diverting waste. So there are benefits to both, but you could even do both. If you had commercial composting, maybe that's what you do in your lunchroom, but maybe as a class project, students could take out their snack, their fruit and vegetable snack, and mix it in with the garden trimmings, like the weeds that they pick. So just wanted to mention that.
I also wanted to share that in this county, which is very large, we have several different waste haulers, and some are taking care of composting from different schools in the county. Some are not. So part of it is your region and where you live and who your waste hauler is that will be able to help you with that. So I think, like, we've always done cardboard and paper, and I know you talked about stacking trays, whether they're compostable or styrofoam, and how much that makes a difference. And starting even the liquid, pouring their milk out, whatever. I've been to a couple schools where they have the giant 33-gallon, tote, whatever that is, and it's going in there, and the kids just walk up and pour what little left they have, and it's just part of their mindset now, and it's retraining that. This year's just hard because everything's spread out and we don't have that group mentality as much, but I truly believe it can come back if we just even do those little things along the way, that we let them know that environmental education is still there, and that you can continue to do it. Your little teeny part makes a big difference to kids.
I think too, part of this, the food and the plastic is obviously connected, because if we have a locally sourced food that our schools can get their nutritional, meals from, that they potentially could have less plastic wrap, or less impact as far as plastic goes. How does your just a question for all the schools here, how does your process work with getting your food into the cafeteria, and what are some ways that you could see that improved, which again could likely, if it's more local, could reduce the plastic intake that our schools are seeing? Anybody jump in? So again, like, where does your food come from, I guess, just to put more simply, that you have in your cafeterias?
A lot of ours, I actually have a food service vendor. So obviously they're doing all the ordering, but we do have some that comes from, like, the Department of Defense, the DOD. We get fruits and vegetables that way. Plus, obviously, everything that is purchased, outside of commodities as well. Just, the semi of a grocery truck is sort of what it is, coming into us at 12 different locations, weekly.
Anybody else?
And unfortunately, a lot of that is individually wrapped, so it's
Right.
wrapped in plastic.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of the problem. So if food could be sourced for our schools closer to home, a local farm, how would that work? And wouldn't that be better? Does that work?
Unfortunately, I mean, it's a great idea, but unfortunately, especially today with the pandemic, we have to unfortunately have a lot of that stuff prepackaged to be able to get it out to kids in the best, safest manner. The other thing is too, is as we go forward as well, is going to be staffing issues. You don't have a lot of, scratch kitchens anymore in school districts. You have sort of like a hybrid. Some things may be done, as close to scratch as we can get, but yet it's not like, say, the things that we grew up with, that was like, say, you all ate the same thing, you didn't get a choice on the menu. I mean, we have to offer, usually we've had up to 5 different offerings, and we're elementary schools, so just trying to get kids, to eat the various things. So again, it all depends on what we're able to do with the staffing as well.
Carrie, did you want to jump in?
I did just want to say part of what I'm feeling passionate about is seeing kids throwing food into the garbage cans and sometimes not even having the option to, my son has recess after his lunch. So if he eats fun on a run, he's in kindergarten, so he can't walk all the way across the building to put his apple and his string cheese in his backpack to bring home for snack later. So they're saying, oh, sorry, buddy, just throw it away. You have to go to recess. I'm like, what? We're teaching our kids that food is garbage. So although it's really frustrating that these prepackaged individual serving things are in plastic, it does make it donatable. And there's such a huge need in our communities. I was messaging with Catherine Nelson separately that we're kind of saying buying milk in bulk. When I met with the food pantry, he said those little pints are gold to them because they have elderly people or people who are living by themselves. They can't drink an entire gallon. And quite honestly, they don't get many donations anyways. So if we can say, hey, this child doesn't want to drink their milk, which the government has paid for this lunch and we're requiring them to take, if they don't want to drink it, we're filling this enormous need. So although it's super frustrating, this individual packaging, plastic, we're also able, because of that, being able to tackle another huge problem, which is food insecurity. So just to try and maybe see it as there's a positive to that too. And we can't fix all the problems, but we can certainly help multiple issues with, food waste is a huge problem, but fixing one area can actually help other areas too. So just to kind of shine a positive light on it as well.
Well, and it's interesting, you talk about the scheduling. My building, my elementary, they have recess first, then they come into lunch, which has been great. But then earlier we touched on the scheduling of lunch periods, and I always get pushback that we're not a restaurant that happens to educate kids or a school that happens to feed kids. So if they have to cut 5 minutes out of something, it's going to be lunchtime. And then you hear, well, these kids, the line is so long, change your menu because the line is so long. And the kids aren't going to be standing in line. They're going to bring their lunch from home, and there's just not enough time. So I don't know what the solution is to that. But I have found that by them going to recess first and then coming in, they are wild children in line, but they do eat better.
Susan? Oh, you're unmuted.
Thanks. Couple things. Another program that's managed at 7 Generations Ahead is the Illinois Farm to School program, and I put that link in the chat. My colleague Diane Chapita manages that, and she has lots of resources for how schools can get more local foods on their school menus. They focus also on school gardens, how to work with Department of Defense, food source food, just all different ways, how to do scratch cooking or move towards it. You know, all of these things, if we look at them as incremental steps, which brings me to my next point about all of the packaging with the COVID meal service. That cafeteria culture, the Microplastic Madness toolkit, there is a little video there that shows this is students leading this action. They are doing desktop lunch surveys. So they are taking apart their COVID protected meal and looking at how many plastic bags there are, what are all the little pieces of single-use plastics. And, you know, okay, we're not going to make them all go away necessarily with COVID, but what makes sense? What are the easy things to get rid of? And I think it's in that little video too. And they said they got rid of 3 plastic bags or something like that. So, you know, that might not seem like a lot, but when you're serving so many meals day in and day out, and this is happening all over the country, it does add up. So again, just incremental, and look at, you know, where does it make sense? You know, where don't we need that little piece of plastic right there? Or maybe they don't need, not every meal needs a spork. So instead of putting the spork in the packet in the bag, make it a grab, something the students can grab when they're getting that classroom meal service.
Oh, I hate to put anybody on the spot, but Sandy, you're at Woodstock High School, right? So I just did. Do you want to, would you mind sharing anything that you're doing there? If you can hear me or not. Sandy? Okay, I want to invite everyone to come on camera if you are comfortable doing that. We're a small group. Cameras off was really more for our main thing. We've got about half of you on camera and half off. So we would love to see you and engage some other schools here in the discussion. And toward the end, just a sec, Gigi, I see you. Toward the end, where I want to save a little bit of time at about 12:45. I just want to talk with you about future goals that you think you would be comfortable setting as a group, you know, as your particular school. And I'll give you a heads up when we're ready to move to that. Gigi?
I wanted to tell Carrie, I really like that you're trying to take that positive spin, and you know, you're looking at that, and Susan did too, and what can we get out of there? I know that one of the schools that we've been to this year, they're actually doing some of that similarly, where they're taking the lids off the single-use plastics or bringing in the lids from their detergent bottles or the Miracle Whip jar, and they're doing a project called Lids for Kids. So people can donate those lids, and then those lids go to a place that they've contracted with that will make it into, they're hoping to get enough to make classroom benches to have an outside environmental area to teach science or go read books, whatever. So they actually took that spin, like you were talking about a little bit between the two of you, and taking just the lids and collecting them, and they have to have so many pounds, and they weigh them every week. There's, you know, classroom competitions, and but the fact that they realize that is not something that can be recycled because it's completely different kind of plastic than what the bottle is made out of. So they learned that little piece too, and then use it for good. So I appreciate you're trying to take a positive spin on this, as many as you are, and that you're doing what you can with what you have during these times, and we're not giving up. And I know I took, like in my spiel, that you stay in the struggle, you try to figure it out, and the kids are more than willing to jump on when they see that they can make that little tiny impact.
We had a couple of questions about educating the kids on the different things, and staff too, about different things that can be compostable and what is not, if you're switching your lunchroom to that. And then also kind of what the biggest barriers were for CPS, and kind of how they got around that, maybe kind of looking forward, those small steps to make. I don't know if Susan, you would be the best, or if anyone else has experience from their own schools.
So I'm sorry, so it's a question about what are the barriers to,
Yeah, just some, like, what was the biggest barrier for CPS to get started? And then also just like confusion, like I think this would be a barrier, right? With the students and the staff educating them. And I know you spoke on like the toolkits and everything, but just to make sure that they all know what's composted or compostable and, you know, what can't be, that kind of thing, as you're getting started.
yeah, well, in CPS, the program started in 2014, and it was because the sustainability director at the time recognized that their hauler had a organics route that, you know, passed along lots of CPS schools. So it was like taking it from a university had been contracting with the hauler for organics, but at that point, no CPS schools had been. So it was started as a pilot at one school to pick up the organics there. And so, you know, it's like many things. It's great to start with a pilot or start small and work up. But now currently the challenges to expansion, we are looking to expand. The program's been in 14 schools for a few years. This year we're expanding to 10 more schools before the end of the school year. It's a lot. It's very excited about it. But you know, the challenges that we face, it's always trying to make this more institutionalized. So right now the food service provider company Aramark is providing the compostable bags. That was a big leap forward when that happened, and it makes it easier. But as everywhere, anytime you have staffing transitions, which were just exacerbated by the pandemic, that's a challenge. And so, you know, many of those schools that we had previously launched, we, you know, continue to help them troubleshoot. But when you have significant staffing changes of facilities or administrators, you know, that's always a challenge. So we try to be back in touch with them and like, what help do you need? We're, you know, in terms of education, always need to re-educate students, but especially when they've been out of school for an extended period of time. So just providing the tools for re-educating students. But even so, it's something that has to happen every year. When students come back, there's going to be kindergartners that are new to the building. There's freshmen new to the high school, and those students especially need that support.
Thanks, Susan. Can I welcome Emily to come off mic and talk about what's going on at McHenry County College, and maybe just introduce yourself real quick, Emily.
Yeah, hi everyone. So I work at MCC. I've been here for, well, I started in April of 2020, so right in the middle of the lockdown. I did visit here before, so I can kind of give you the before and after of everything. I am the farm practicum director, so I run the student farm. As for our cafeteria, Kim Hankins with the Sustainability Center have these big, beautiful 3-bin containers all around the cafeteria with, you know, landfill, recycling, compost. We do have commercial composting set up. They're really great, but the other day I was walking by and there was a Dorito bag in the composting thing. I mean, these are adult students. They can read, they know what should go in there, but that doesn't mean they actually are doing those things. But we're trying really hard. Our trays are reusable. We do have a dishwashing thing, but we're still on paper plates. We still have plastic silverware. It's still that kind of grab and go mentality that the pandemic definitely did bring on, but they're cooking again. You know, the cafeteria is using stuff from from our gardens and our hydroponic systems again, which is super exciting. In our little farm stand that we have on campus, we try to get away from all the one-use plastic bags. So we've been experimenting with compostable bags for our greens and spinach and all the things that we're growing out here. We ran into a lot of the bags just kind of had a weird smell. So we keep trying a different manufacturer, trying to find ones that aren't. We found a really good one that again came from the Sustainability Center. Got us, bought them for the farm. It's more of a cellophane, but it's compostable and you can compost them in your own garden. Unfortunately, we can't put them in the compost are commercial compost bags, like we talked about before. They're not accepting those things, but this is more of a cooler, a produce cooler. So this is like a grab and go. So hopefully when people go home, they're composting them at home. But it's not a Ziploc bag. We have gotten away from that. So it's the little steps. Yeah, we're trying out here.
I know it's tough because of the pandemic, and it's so hard to have conversations without, thinking about that, obviously. But would it be, I just kind of envision maybe a nice field trip for students and for maybe starting with teachers to go to the college, Emily, and see how that system is done. And also for Susan, if you can share how a school that might be interested in the zero waste tool, the toolkit that you provide, how would they get that? I mean, we're working with schools that we get grants and then we engage with some schools, but what if, schools right here want to write their own grant and get that material in their cafeterias sooner rather than later? How would they go about doing that? So field trip and resources.
I could just jump in that food waste reduction toolkit and lots of other resources are available on our website. That toolkit's available for free download. And it has a lot of resources in it, like loaded with links and curriculum resources as well. So I suggest everyone take a look at that. I'll put it in the chat again. But then if you are interested in working with us more closely with some on the ground support and education for your school, yes, reach out to us. We have the ability to work with another school this year. So I will put my contact info in the chat and look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you, Susan. And Emily, what do you think about how would a field trip work? Or, I mean, I don't know if schools are really taking field trips anymore. I mean, because of pandemic, but also funding, right?
Yeah. I mean, field trips to see the farm and all that for sure. We have a small composting thing that program that we're doing just on campus, but it's the scraps coming from the high tunnels and the greenhouses, and it's just a big mountain. It's not really anything to brag about. But yeah, if anyone wants to come see what we're doing, call me.
And I'm going to put my email in the chat too, so that just let me know if you want to be part of a visit there. And we can also talk with Kim Hankins, who is not only the Defender's new president, but also the director of Sustainability Center at McHenry County College. And I'll put my email in the chat so we can stay in touch. And also just a quick little heads up, in a few minutes, I'm going, with your permission, take a screenshot, a picture of all of you. So I'll ask for a smile for those who are on camera in just a few minutes. So you're forewarned, just a few minutes away. Any other questions before we talk about maybe some common goals we can work on? Okay, so I am then going to take that photo. I just put my email, Defender's Director. I spelled it correctly. And you want to take one too, so I have a backup. There, by the way, we're physically at Duke's Ale House and Kitchen, having this. Chef Zach is running the restaurant breakout room, and he's also a member of the board of directors of the Defenders. And Duke's is closed on Monday, so we decided to come here, even though we couldn't be in person at MCC, because we just still wanted to be together, at least, the coordinators of this. So if you don't mind, and we will have your permission to use these photos. Oh, somebody's calling me. Isn't that funny? Sorry, I declined a board member just now. I say publicly, a board member was just calling me. Jeez. Now I'll text that board member. So sorry to hang up on you. Thank you for that. Let's see, Claire, you're also on the Waste Reduction Action Team, and Annette, is there anything that I've missed or that you would want to pull out as far as conversation before maybe we set some goals, and then I will share what I do know about a possible plastic-free lunch day in McHenry County. Did I miss anything, Annette and Claire?
I don't think so. I think I got all the questions that were sent in, and I've been taking notes. So everything will be sent out to you guys after today with all of these links that have been going in the chat and all the emails and the answers to the questions and stuff. So you'll have that for later.
Okay, thank you. So one of the things that was mentioned at the start is this possible, well, actually, I think it's very probable. I just inquired about it too far in advance, but I need to get back to the county because we want to have a proclamation for a plastic-free lunch day countywide. And Susan, I think the date is May 10th. That was the date that PS 15 in Brooklyn did their plastic-free lunch day. I'm pretty sure it was May 10th, and we kind of wanted to mirror that.
Yeah, let's check, because I think I just saw something
I
like
think you're
maybe
on
they changed it to the 16th, but
Or is it me?
it was May 10th before, but let's look, maybe it changes year to year with the calendar.
May 10th is a Tuesday, I can tell you that, because so what I'll do is go back, but of course, we would want and need all of your help getting the word out about this. So I just wanted to put that out there that we would like to do this. And basically what it would mean is a proclamation is a statement by the county advocating for plastic-free lunch day. I think it was 2016, we had a countywide, let's see, a BYO bag day. So we've done this before. The county's great to work with, and it would kind of, we would want to have maybe some messaging that you could all share to send out to your school communities through newsletters, to parents. We can, as a group, come back around. We could communicate via email, just send me a note, and we can figure out how that messaging would work best on your end, so that we can, get your colleagues and administrators and families on board. And just, of course, I know COVID. So we can talk about that too, if it's even possible to do that. But that's sort of one goal that I wanted to start off with, that might help us as we emerge from the COVID pandemic and the plastic crisis that it in part has evolved into. What are some other ideas and goals that, as school communities, that you think we could work on together moving forward? Because we are going to come back together this summer and have lunch and talk some more about what we achieved or what we're might put out for the following school year.
I think
Anybody jump in.
A great little giveaway way to promote would be a reusable water bottle. Our kids, they're forgetting them, and we're not using water fountains. So that would be something they can use throughout the summer and here at school, and promote, the defenders at the same time.
Hmm. I wrote that down. Doug?
Is your question related to waste reduction solely?
Yes. Yeah. Waste reduction, food waste reduction, single-use plastic waste reduction. What is it, if you are using styrofoam in any form, could that be a goal to no longer use styrofoam? Because there is going to also be a statewide bill. It might be a great thing to knock off, because I don't know exactly the bill, the styrofoam ban, who it's going to affect, but it could affect schools. I don't know that much about it yet, but I'm going to definitely keep you informed about it. So that kind of an overarching big goal, like, not using styrofoam. I didn't see a lot of hands of people that are using styrofoam. So that's good. Am I right on that conclusion? Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just saying that ours does use some styrofoam containers still.
So do you think that could be a goal within the next year, 2 years? Because
probably not this year, because I think we're just kind of focusing on getting the composting taken care of, and like I said, the share table and getting the food that's currently going in the garbage can to the food insecure. So, but it definitely, that's why I said we're kind of trying to decide if we need to start our own nonprofit at this point to kind of get things rolling. But I did say to my partner, that's something that we would definitely want to write into our mission statement, that it's not just food waste, because there are so many other issues of sustainability that we can really focus on and be better with.
I know I can speak up for us at Huntley. I know we probably can't get away from containers in general, but I would love to be able to have manufacturers keep up with some more greenable situations, you know, the cardboard compartment trays, or, you know, a reusable one, at least one that's been made from recyclable materials. So that would be a goal. And another easier one, probably as our labor hopefully can subside, would be a lot less pre-portioned, half-portion things, whether it's cherry tomatoes or, you know, celery sticks and various things like that, and try to go to more bulk items, and you weigh them out or you measure those out per container. Again, some of those, though, for the sheer cost effectiveness versus the lack of labor, have just been, even though you'd love to go the other route, you know it's not effective for you at this time to be able to do it. So those would be goals, to continue to monitor our situation we're in and try to see if we can move towards those back to where we were. And then Doug's on the call, we're in the same district, but him and I had already been looking into a commercial composting type company, and we're trying to work with the company we already use. So I think we'll continue to work, him and I and the school board and that partner, and try to see where we can go down the road with that.
I think also connecting with any environmental clubs that you have. I know some of your schools here have environmental eco-green clubs. You know, that's a great resource, because those students and their supporting teachers and parent volunteers are already committed, and that could be a nice team, you know, a place where you can go to draw for monitors in the cafeteria. Once you get to that point where you are, you know, diverting things to the proper place, having that system monitored is really important. And if you don't have a green club, as Gigi mentioned in her talk, the Defenders has, through our education action team in McSeep, developed a handbook for starting and sustaining an environmental club. And I have hard copies in my office, and I also have a link. I have a PDF I can send you. Anybody
Mr.
else?
Reed, I was just going to say, Mr. Reed, you said you were from Huntley, is that correct? I met with some people just this last week from Marlow. That's a little small eco club they have there, and they're interested in learning about composting, and we're coming back in March to work with the kids to have them build their first one, but in the tubs, just to learn about it and really educate, so that maybe there'll be some of the kids you can tap into probably next fall to spearhead, you know, a different kind or different level of kickoff. But we're starting those steps, and we're excited to be there.
Oh, great, Gigi. Well, I'd love to reach out to you and kind of pop in, make sure it's okay with Marlo, whoever's running it, and maybe pop in with that, because I was really sold on your mayonnaise jar teaching thing. I think that'd be a great starting point.
And it's a 7th grade teacher. I just met her this week, Lisa. I can't pronounce her last name. It starts with an M, like Manjolese. And she was pretty excited, and they've got an environmentalist coming to talk with them next month, and then we're on for March. So we're getting there.
Go ahead, Doug.
I'm sorry. I was just going to bring up with Richard and Gigi brought up, I'm looking forward to that being just the start of something bigger in our district with other schools, and I'm going to try to work on the curriculum department to get a first meeting with those sustainability clubs like I did at Marlow. That was the kickstart to that one. I'm really excited about it. That was their #1 project, composting, that they had on their list. So looking forward to that.
We had a suggestion from Woodstock about encouraging students to walk or ride bikes to school. which obviously all of these things that we're talking about help mitigate the problems and causes of climate change as well. Any other ideas or brainstorms for some big goals or small goals to set out that we can work on together?
Carrie?
Oh, Carrie?
Yeah, thank you. So part of what I'm working on getting the kinks kind of taken out of is with the share table, if it's a prepackaged item, it can go on the share table and those items can be donated to a food pantry.
Love it.
But Mr. Reed was talking about buying things more in bulk and then being able to repackage those and that being a goal. But once that happens, those items can no longer be donated to a food pantry because it's been kind of repackaged. But I have found several farms in the area who were excited to partner with us that they are able to take those items. So really it's just needing some people who are willing to be the middleman to say, okay, I'm gonna, it's a farm I drive past already on my way to the food pantry. So if you have like one volunteer or one person who's passionate about it, or to get a group of people maybe through the PTO who are able to support your efforts, I think it's so much of it is there are ways that we can make a really big impact, and it really isn't that difficult. It's just getting the right people to hear it and to care about it and support you in it. So I just wanted to kind of share the farm donations as something to maybe be considered in a way to implement that in your area as well.
Yeah, great point, Carrie. I think for all of us as operators and in our positions, part of our challenge besides the education part is actually weighing in operationally the pros and cons to it, so getting rid of the prepackaged items, but yet I could still reuse those in another use versus bringing in bulk and saving 900 small bags in comparison to, am I throwing away 600 of those portions of food because I can't reuse them, So I think that's a lot of the surveying and what's best for your districts. Good point.
We have just a couple of minutes left. Any closing statements? I want to obviously say thank you to Gary, had to hop off, but to Susan and to Gigi for speaking with our school group today, and to all of you for being here. One thing that was mentioned early on is a waste audit, and that's something that each school could perhaps do and look, and that's a place to start. It's hard to say how we can change if we're not really looking at what we've got underneath our feet and what the current practices are. Again, the pandemic, of course, has forced us to do certain things, but as we come out post-pandemic, maybe engaging in an audit might be a good goal for each individual school to do. And then perhaps when we get back together this summer, we can just kind of catch up on who was able to do an audit, were any changes implemented, whether no matter how small, because to me, there is no small change. The little things can have a huge impact, especially, of course, if a lot of people participate in that small change. So, it would be nice then to please document any movement you've been able to take over the remainder of this school year. I know it's already almost February, but we do want to come back around to each other before the end of this year and talk some more. So keep in mind that we'll want to share any kind of advancements that you've made or further ideas on setting goals in our county. And then, of course, I would definitely want to be in touch with you about this idea of a plastic-free, countywide plastic-free lunch day. So please send me an email in this group so we can stay together. I really see your interest and your being here today as, kind of a working group within our waste reduction action team, our connection to the schools, and then, and helping formulate what's possible in this area of food and single plastic reduction. So I don't want to keep you past our time. I did put the hashtag in there. And again, you are more than welcome to send me an email. I'd love to be in touch with you. And I just, again, thank our Waste Reduction Action Team for putting on a really terrific summit today. And I'm just so glad that you could all join us. So thank you on behalf of the defenders and our waste reduction team. And take care.
Thank you so much for hosting us. Nice to meet you all.
You too. Thank you and have a great rest of your Monday.
It is.